Welcome back for another episode of Husky Careers Unleashed, brought to you by Michigan Tech Career Services. Today is another exciting day for us here because we've got a member of our team directly from Career Services who is a Michigan Tech alum, as well as spent a lot of time of his career in and out of various places here at Michigan Tech. So to kick off the episode, we're going to let Jim introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. This is Jim Desrochers. I work in career services as the director of employer relations.
What degrees did you get, and when did you graduate from Michigan Tech?
I graduated from Michigan Tech with my degree in electrical engineering. Started straight out of college at Caterpillar. I was down in Peoria, Illinois, and worked there for a couple of years, and then switched to work for Kimberly Clark. And throughout that time, was doing basically things electrical engineers do: factory automations, performance improvements in factories and those kind of settings. And after a few years of that, we made a decision that we wanted to move back to Houghton. And so I worked up here for an equipment manufacturer for quite a few years, and then ended up starting to work at Michigan Tech about 14 years ago now. And when I started working for Michigan Tech, it became pretty easy to get my MBA. So I re-enrolled and got my MBA part-time while I was working. So I have two degrees from Michigan Tech. There's just a few years in between the two different degrees.
Now, did you ever imagine during your undergrad that you would be back at Michigan Tech working as part of your corporate journey?
No, no. And in fact, that's the funny thing, right? I got this highly technical degree, and then throughout the course of my career, I became less technical. And that sort of happens with getting promoted. I was working at a company and I left the technical side of things to manage the customer service operation. And then it's all about managing people, actually managing to fix some of the problems that I designed in as an engineer, if I'm being honest, which was kind of funny and ironic. And went on the management track. And so all those technical skills and all the equations that you study so hard when you're a student, you don't use any of those other than the fact that you're using the idea of how to logically solve a problem, set the problem up, and work the problem, right? And problems with people are a little different than mathematics and electronics. They require a little harder to get the variables, and you can't really stick a meter in and just measure current someplace to get that equation solved. So it's been fun working at Michigan Tech because of my industrial experience. As I've worked in different offices here on campus, it's almost like its own little language. Universities have a language, and businesses have a language. And being able to translate between them, when a company says, "I want to do this," you say, "Well, at the university, that means you're asking for this." Right. And so it's fun to make those connections. I always try to treat people and have some fun while I'm doing it. And usually, if you can start up a conversation, you can find a way to help each other solve problems, which is really, as an engineer, kind of what you do throughout your whole career is you solve problems. The problems just keep changing shapes and size as you proceed along.
And we've talked about that with some of our other guests that just because you got a degree in one thing doesn't necessarily mean that your career is going to directly follow that path. So it's very common for people once they're out in industry, they're learning new skills, they're learning on the job, they're still applying the foundations that they learned in their degree, just in new ways. And it sounds like you've done that with your engineering background, now being in higher ed for quite some time.
Right. I mean, there's no little kid when they're 5 years old who says they want to be the director of employer relations when they grow up, right? It's I want to be a fireman or a train conductor or a astronaut, right? And so, yes, all these things are sort of made up as you go along, and career paths are definitely not straight lines. They sort of meander and bebop around a little bit, and some of that you control, and some of that is controlled by external factors, the economy or location or changes in your life or whatever. So it is funny afterwards when you look back and it's like, well, I guess I'm in a good spot, right? I wouldn't have planned here. I couldn't have drawn this on a map, but it's all right. And as long as you're working with people you like and doing what you like to do, you can have fun doing it.
Exactly. And kind of in the realm of learning outside of your formal education to help kind of shape your career path, the topic we're going to be kind of focusing on today is how does kind of involvement in campus or your community and things like that feed back into your career and maybe help drive some of the changes or decision making as you're navigating that path throughout your career. So, jumping in, kind of looking back to when you were a student, were there activities or organizations you were involved with on campus that helped kind of shape where you initially ended up after graduation?
So that's funny. I think of working in career services and talking to students about what they should do and what they should have on their resume. I didn't do any of that. I got good grades, but I wasn't active in any kind of organizations. I had good summer internships, and I get around to my senior year, and you start thinking about I need three references, and I should list the clubs and the things that I'm in, and I couldn't even find three references. I asked my academic advisor if he would be a reference for me. He'd met with me like three times, right, once a year to go through. But I was on track. I could follow the flow chart. I knew I was going to graduate. And now I sit here thinking, had I done any, just even the bare minimum, had gotten involved in a few clubs, I would have had more choices and more opportunities and places to work, right? And I think you parlay that into the professional side of life when you're involved in the communities, and we'll talk about that more in a second. It is funny how, in a perfect world, you'd be involved in college and then you just translate that into different organizations as you graduated. I was really involved in high school and I didn't want to be involved in college specifically because I wanted to focus on my schoolwork and my studies, which that's okay. But it is funny how there are some developmental things that you don't learn if you make that choice, right? It turns out fine in the long run, but I had to scramble more than I probably would have had I been involved in. And you can be too involved. That's a
Hmm.
problem too, right? But yeah, I was like scorched earth, like no involvement. And they said, what do you do? What are your hobbies? Well, I just hang out with friends. Like it's not a real resounding positive answer in an interview when you're like just hanging
Hmm.
out and join the honor fraternity. Sure, that looks good on your resume, but I didn't do anything. I just got the thing because my GPA was high enough. So you list it, but it's not the same as an activity you can share with anybody. So
Well, and I feel like during my time at Michigan Tech, I was on the opposite end of that spectrum. I was too involved at times where my coursework slipped a little bit. So there's definitely that fine line of finding the things that you enjoy, also being involved in the organizations that are good for the resume and good for life skills, but also realizing you're here for your education to get a degree to prepare you. So remember to kind of keep that balance so that you're not overstressing yourself with a heavy course load, a lot of student organizations, and potentially working on top of that. So just kind of a disclaimer is find a happy medium between what Jim and I did during our times as tech students.
exactly right, right. And I've seen that whole spectrum, right? Kids who get terrible grades because they're the president of every organization on campus, and you would argue they've got great leadership skills, but companies want to measure the GPA and right, and so trying to figure out what the right balance of and is you don't know the right answer until too late, probably. Like I think I'm overcommitted, but I can't do anything about it right now, right?
So looking back and seeing kind of how Michigan Tech has changed over the years, is there any specific organizations or activities you would recommend students look into if they're kind of wanting to dip their toe into that campus involvement side of things?
I think there's certain pressure to say, well, if your degree is blank, you should join the society for blank. You know, IEEE is the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. So I was the double E major. I joined IEEE. Well, I realized that I didn't have to do anything to be in that club. And I think there's the difference between going to a meeting once a month and joining the leadership of that group that helps set the directions of the meetings. So the curious part is you probably need to go to a lot of meetings until you find a group of people that you think you would fit with. So there's part of the social aspect of trying to find a friend group and then saying, all right, if I'm going to give up a few hours a week of my time, I might as well do it with a group of guys and gals that I like.
Mhm.
So I ought to double down and join the leadership of this group. And I think not going, I always went to a few meetings. I just didn't take any leadership. So maybe it's not fair to say I wasn't involved, but I did like whatever the minimum is. That was me, right?
Hmm.
I think what I've seen over the years at Michigan Tech is there's far more clubs and far more groups. There should be more ways to find your tribe and to find the people that you get along with or think you'll get along with if you have to figure that out, right? And on the recruiting side of things, sort of my day job, right? The professional side are easiest for the companies to target. They want to hire an electrical
Hmm.
engineer, they're going to go to the electrical engineering professional society. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with joining other clubs, right? And you can have leadership experience and skills, whether you're the a president of a professional society or just a member of the team that organizes, volleyball or whatever, right? So I think with reflection, the ability for somebody to talk about what they learned in the club and the experiences they got, the club almost becomes irrelevant
Hmm.
because leadership skills are leadership skills and organize like if there's a party on Saturday that you've got to organize, you still got to organize the party. It doesn't matter who's coming to the thing,
Hmm.
right? And so I think that's the part that's hardest for students to understand, especially during like a resume setting where somebody says, "Tell me about what you do," and you're like, "I'm in this club." Well, what do you do? Well, I go to the meetings. Well, then you're not. So being able to articulate what you're learning and being able to use that as an example for somebody to share what it is that that experience helped shape you is kind of fun, right? And I think of jump ahead a little bit to work, right? You move to a different city. It's not, you're not living with your parents anymore. You're in some strange town. And part of wanting to survive that, like being a freshman in college all over again, you need to find a friend group. Well, who's your friend group? Probably the other people that got hired in the same batch of people you got hired in if you worked for a company that had a like an orientation program or something. And I did that. My first job at Caterpillar, there were 150 people all hired as part of this college graduate training program. We spent the first year on these little mini co-op rotations in the
Hmm.
company. Once a month there was a social activity and we'd play, go to the baseball game or play something or do whatever. And so you had this built-in network that helped you feel comfortable in the city. And companies are the same as universities. Michigan Tech knows you're going to drop out if you don't have friends and you can't
Hmm.
find things to do.
Yeah.
So does every company that hires you. Like, oh, great, you'll move somewhere. How do you fit into this community? So I felt very lucky that I had a built-in network of like a freshman cohort all
Hmm.
over again. That was a great way to start. I think then there's the community itself and the way you want to get involved with it. And so I instantly had some friends, and we would join volleyball leagues and play poorly, but play, softball or whatever, especially in the beer league, to have some fun and have something to do at night because your work it's not always 8 to 5, but it's far more regimented. You
Hmm.
have far more free time in the evenings than you do in college. And so the weekends, when you're not studying for exams all weekend long, it's like, well, what do I do? I've got all day, and then I've got the next day.
Hmm.
Like you need to find something to fill your time, and so that's where the community involvement is as much about your sanity and not being bored as it is about professional development, right? So there's kind
Hmm.
of that evolution of I need to find my tribe, I need to find people that I want to hang out with, and then I need to do what I like to do. And so sports leagues, right, and got married throughout the course of all this also. But we would play in a couples volleyball league at the bar, or everybody goes out for happy hour on a Thursday night, and you go out to happy hour, whether you want to go or not. You kind of feel like, well, I
Hmm.
might as well go because I got nothing else to do, right? Or
Yeah.
join a club to ride bicycles or whatever you do. And really, some of those skills are just personal preference. So you're trying to find people that are like you that do those things.
Throughout those different community experiences, were there opportunities that you learned skills or lessons that you were then able to apply in your career as well?
Yeah, and I think, we talked at the beginning about having this engineering degree and solving problems. And then at some point in time, you feel some sort of obligation to help the community, wherever that place is that you live. And so playing volleyball is fine. Clearly, I'm not going to become a professional athlete or do any of this stuff, right? But you decide that you want to give back and you want to help make the place that you live a little bit better for the people around you. And
Mhm.
so I think that's where I started to see the bleed over between just trying to find friends and to want to make a difference. And making a difference can mean lots of things, right? We used to volunteer at nursing homes, but I should bring our dog in. Some of the people at the homes would like to pet the dog. I wasn't really doing anything other than bringing my dog, who liked to have people pet her, into, into a place. But for those people, it made a difference. And then started to join community organizations and different cities we were in over the years. And that was, we're pet lovers. So that was joining the Friends of the Animals
Mhm.
clubs, societies, taking on a leadership role there, joining the Friends of the Library. I volunteered, I served on the Chamber of Commerce. All those were leadership, problem solving. Uh, Ended up being the financial or the treasurer for some of these organizations. That's because I know my way around a spreadsheet, and can kind of control a checkbook, right? There
Mhm.
didn't really need an MBA degree to do that, but it's nice that I had it. I felt more confident that I was doing the right thing. So then there's this bleed over between stuff that you're doing every day at work and stuff that you're doing as a volunteer in an organization that hopefully these organizations need strong leaders, right? And your
Yeah.
school board, and if you have kids, we probably want to be on a school board or join the Chamber of Commerce. These things are all out there in these communities, and you don't need any special skills other than what you already know from
Mhm.
4 years of college and years of work or your degrees and all the rest, right? And I think that's when it kind of becomes fun, when you can pay it full circle and help organize some, I don't know, community fundraiser event that, like we've done stuff where the library has more things for children in the children's department than they did before, because we ran a fundraiser and we were able to collect the money and buy the thing to the library. That's pretty cool. I mean, it sounds corny, but at the end of the day, I know lots of people that use the library, and the library is some percentage better because of my efforts. That's
Mhm.
that's kind of rewarding, right? It's kind of fun. So it changes over time what you do and how that relates and how that interacts. That's not a thought that I would have had when I was 20. So it's fine. It's not like on day one you say I'm going to save the world, but I think you do become more aware once you finally settle in a place. And settling is interesting. The weirdest time we had was my wife and I got transferred down to Arkansas, and we knew we would be there for between 3 and 5 years was kind of the assignment. And so you talk about feeling like you're temporary someplace, and Ryan,
Mhm.
you experience this every day of your life, right? But where you're like, well, am I going to put roots down in this town? Do I really want to make lifelong friends that I know I'm going to leave in 2 years or 3 years? We struggled a little bit with what to get involved with. And do you join a church or do you join this organization or whatever? All of our friends were also people that were there on 3 to 5 years assignments. Turns out that that's awesome, because now they live everywhere else and we live in different places. So when I go on vacation, I can see them. But very there's a transitory lifestyle, right?
Mhm.
So which clubs do you join is also a function of how long you think you're going to be there, and lots of factors, right? But it's no different than being in college. Try different clubs. If you go to a meeting and you hate all the people there, don't go back, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Don't join that one, right?
Referring back to kind of your role now in employer relations, have you noticed or gotten feedback from employers on how they respond to candidates who have more involvement, whether in campus or in community?
Yeah, I think so. I think the what the companies are trying to find out during an interview process, and it's very formal, and there's lots of
Mhm.
rules and regulations around these things, but they're really trying to find out if you're going to be a good fit with the kind of people that I have working at my organization. So it's like bringing a friend into your group of friends, right? The new kid moves to your school, and how do you know that they want to hang out with them? Well, you got to ask them, and you got to
Mhm.
find out. And I think the students that are in clubs and active in clubs and societies have plenty of examples of how do they work with somebody that didn't fit in,
Mhm.
whatever, however you state that question. But the common interview question is, describe a time you had to work on a project with somebody you didn't like, or you didn't get along with, or whatever, right? And I think the examples that you have from having done this in real life and say, hey,
Mhm.
every year we got to find new leaders, and I'm the president now, but I had to identify somebody that would be the next president. We had to have like all those skills you have to have
Mhm.
demonstrated. far more authentically than saying, "Well, I read a book, and if that happened, I think I would apply this process." What companies
Hmm.
see through that pretty quickly, or they ask you a follow up question and they realize that you don't actually know what you're talking about. So we always talk about the STAR method and being
Hmm.
specific with the examples you give. That's why you're specific, right? It's like, have this ever happened to you? If the answer is no, the answer is no.
Hmm.
The odds of the answer being no are a lot smaller if you're actually involved with organizations and groups and you talk to lots of places. So it just presents itself by having far better examples, and companies, you know, they want to like everybody they interview, and they're trying to help you so hard with these interview processes by giving you questions and trying to draw you out of your shell. They know
Hmm.
you're nervous. You probably can't even talk straight. And so, also these clubs and societies sometimes give you a common ground where you're talking to some interviewer and they're like, well, that's funny. I was a member of the XYZ society too. And all of a sudden you're more relaxed, they're more relaxed. They want you to be able to express yourself and give you a
Hmm.
fair shake on the talent evaluation, right? So it's funny how these unwritten benefits that happen because of this. It's not really about the fact that you have three societies listed under your activities tab. It's about your ability to speak to what you
Hmm.
learned, what you didn't learn, right? Brian, I can imagine you being having this resume with all these experiences, and maybe a reviewer says, "Oh my God, this guy must have terrible grades because he was hyper involved," right? Like, so there is something about yourself by how
Hmm.
many or a few things that you join that show this guy's a joiner or this one's a leader, or we've got personality tests for all these
Hmm.
things too, right? But where you are at in your life helps determine what you choose to do or choose not to do.
Well, and I feel like both you and I are probably on the more outgoing side of kind of the social interactions, and a good majority of our students probably are a little bit more introverted or less outgoing. What kind of advice would you have for them to help find meaningful interactions or involvement on campus, for somebody who maybe isn't as comfortable just putting themselves out there into these social activities?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Years later, I did a Myers-Briggs personality test, and I actually score as an introvert on that test. A lot of people are surprised by that, and if you read more about it, right, a true extrovert gets energy from being in large social situations. I okay work in the room and be in a large social situation, but I'm exhausted by the end of it. So my joy comes from being alone, the introverted tendencies, right? And I
Mhm.
think that's the thing. Like, if somebody says I'm an introvert, I can't go to meetings, that's not true. You just need to be intelligent about how you do it and do the activities that make you happy and give you joy and energy afterwards. So, you know, y- you don't have to be the president at your first meeting. Once you find the people that you get along with and like, leadership opportunities can come, right? Like myself being the treasurer at these organizations, I chose being treasurer because I travel a lot for my job and I couldn't guarantee I was going to be at every meeting. And I could always do the treasurer job remotely at night
Mhm.
from a hotel in a different city if I had to. It's balancing a checkbook, right? And so I think if you just sort of put yourself out there and do the thing, the opportunity will present itself. And you might have to raise your hand. That might be a little bit scary. And you might find out that you're not cut out to be the whatever you volunteered for. That's fine. I mean, you give it a good effort for a year and then you can drop out a year, whatever time period makes
Mhm.
sense, right? Give it a solid effort. And if you say, look, this is just not bringing me any degree of happiness, I need to find something else to do, that's fine. And then the question is, was that the wrong group? Or was it the work? Or, what it was it that you didn't like? And as long as you learn from those things, there's no shame or harm in doing any of them, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I think you know that's what you learn in college, right? You have this safe space and these protections of a university around you to try different things. You can do the same thing even after you're out of college. You have to make sure that you're putting protections up for yourself, right? Uh, to not do anything foolish or not fall into a trap, but you can still experiment and you
Mhm.
can still try different things on. right? I another sport I used to play was broom ball in college. I lived in a few towns that have broom ball clubs. Again, never going to lead the league in scoring or whatever else, but it was part social.
Mhm.
And then you've got the club and they've got to collect dues and they've got to do some different things. It's like, well, all right, yeah, I can do that, right? So um, there's leadership opportunities that just happen accidentally, and maybe they're not even named, but we just need somebody to organize the thing this weekend. And hey, can you do that for us, right?
Mhm.
Answer is either yes or no. If you're good at it, once you say yes once, you'll get asked again and again. So like you just need to say yes the first time, and then you need to be awfully careful about the second time and the third time to know what you're what you're getting yourself into, right?
Has there been anything that surprised you kind of from a long-term impact standpoint of getting more involved in the community that maybe you weren't expecting when you first started getting more involved?
It's surprising how when you get involved in the community doing whatever little thing you do and you say nobody's going to notice, nobody's really going to care that I'm on this board or I'm doing this thing, and then all of a sudden you're on the evening news. Admittedly, it's a slow news day in Houghton a lot of times, but you are making a difference in the community that
Mhm.
you don't understand that you're making. And I think the magnitude of you just committing to do something for an hour a week or an hour a month at a club sounds like it's a throwaway thing and nobody's going to notice. The fact that people notice is the part that's really, really stunning, right? And it's a lot of fun, and that's really when you start to get kind of meta about it. That's where you realize that all the butterfly wings flapping analogies and whatever else. If you've done something to make your little town a little bit better, it matters, and it matters more to people who don't have the resources, either the time or the money or the education to do those kind of things. So it's really kind of a privilege and a ability you get by getting a technical degree. I get paid well enough where I can, volunteer an hour in the community and do something. And I can, if
Mhm.
somebody needs me to buy juice boxes, I'll just buy them and join. Like, these are all small things. None of them are monumental. None of them are changing the world, but they are changing the world a little bit. So that's the fun part about it.
And I think that's a good thing to kind of remind ourselves of, that not only getting involved is good for personal growth and development, but you really are having an impact on the people in your community, regardless of how big or small that impact is. And something that you and I may not think is as monumental could have a massive impact on somebody else. And so taking the time to get involved, I think is definitely worthwhile. Again, not just for your own personal growth and development, but you never know how your actions will positively affect another member of your community.
Yeah, and I think the funny part about that is nobody knows that I joined this thing because I was bored on Tuesday nights or whether I was trying to save the world. Like your motivation
Mhm.
doesn't matter. If you're in the group and you're doing the things in the group, you are having that impact. And this is the, I don't know, fake it till you make it
Mhm.
kind of sometimes, right? Like if you do good things, people will appreciate the good things, even if you're not doing it from a place of love or joy or whatever. Um, you have made that impact. So the end result is kind of the same, regardless of your motivation. Hopefully, you're doing it from a place of joy and love, and that you're
Mhm.
getting some satisfaction out of it yourself. But sometimes you just got to do it, and you might hate it, and then all of a sudden later you're like, well, that was really good for me. I'm happy I did whatever, right? So um,
Exactly.
you know, and you do get burned out on these things. Like, if you just because you joined a group of whatever doesn't mean you need to do it for 20
Mhm.
years. You might do it for 3 and say, you know what? Been there, done that. Next year they come back and say, hey, we really need somebody to organize the thing. And like, you don't necessarily have to fall for that either, right? Like, that doesn't mean because you said once, said yes one time that you are now a life sentence to organize that race every June or whatever, right? So
Well, and that's also an important factor, is kind of self-reflecting and evaluating your time and energy, and what kind of extra bandwidth do you have. And if things in your career are ramping up where maybe you don't have as much flexibility or personal time, it is 100% okay to take a step back, and not be as involved, so that you can focus both on being able to achieve your professional goals, but also having time to kind of recharge and reset during your personal time as well.
Yeah, and throughout life, life changes, right? And so when the kids were small, I was a soccer coach. I don't even know how to play the game, but you can still coach, right? And t-ball and all these other kind of things. So it is nice when the community always needs people to volunteer and help with these things.
Hmm.
Um, Showing up in that case, showing up is the job description, right? Like
Yeah.
tell them to kick the ball at the net. You don't need to know any more rules than that. Like, let's go. Right? Like so that changed over time too. Again, uh, how much community impact does that have? Well, the kids need coaches,
Hmm.
and they want to play the sports, and not everybody's got a schedule that's flexible enough to allow them to do it. It's fun how you meet people in these weird situations, and especially in a town like Houghton, where here's this guy I was just a coach with. And it turns out he's an important person in the community. I didn't know that he was just Coach so and so, right? Like it does strip down the doctors and presidents and all the titles off these things. They're
Hmm.
just a dad or just a mom that's screwing around with a couple of kids who don't know how to play a sport. Like that's fine. So I think sometimes the nice part about these community organizations is you do kind of get out of um, the role that's been
Hmm.
assigned to you in your day job, and you're just Jim, the guy who's helping do the whatever, right? And that's kind of fun and refreshing too. You have to make sure you don't badmouth the people that you work with. It's interesting how that evolves over time. Actually, you think of your resume and the jobs that you have as your career goes along,
Hmm.
and then if you try to draw a straight line through that, that would be impossible. But then you look at the places you volunteered and the places that you did stuff with, and there's no way you could have predicted any of these things. Again, that's even a messier roadmap than the career roadmap. Uh,
Yeah.
as I look back at the stuff I did, but and you'll have different bandwidth during parts of your life. When I was taking my MBA classes while working, I definitely volunteered less because I was studying all the time, right? And so there's nothing wrong with that either. It's not like it has to be a certain percentage of your
Hmm.
time, and there's no magic formula. As long as it's bringing some just sort of joy, it's good.
Exactly. Well, as we are kind of wrapping up towards our timeline for this episode, are there other topics or conversation points you want to touch on that we may have missed during our conversation?
I think doing things and finding out that you like some of them and don't like some of them it's true your whole life. You think I'm going to do this in high school or I'm going to do this in college, and when I grow up, whatever that phrase means, I know what I'm going to want to be, and really know that evolution. It kind of lasts forever, your whole life, right? And
Hmm.
so don't assume that you're going to graduate and then be done and be able to say, "Yep, got it. I'm going to be one of these for the rest of my life." That's going to work for 6 months or a year or 2 years, and then it'll be wrong again, right? So
Yeah.
just knowing that you're going to have to be flexible. In my case, I choose to have a sense of humor about it, but the world's going to throw you some curveballs, and flexibility and adaptability. Uh, Sometimes people might use hashtag tenacity, but go. You got to go with the flow. You've got to be able to hang on for dear life sometimes, and then you got
Hmm.
to be able to relax and enjoy it at other times. That never goes away, and so it's. I choose to have fun doing it, and have. I mean, in my personal opinion, I have the best job on campus. I'm working in an department where companies give students jobs. So this is the payoff of getting the education.
Hmm.
It's like I fun to be part of that party and see that happen, right? And life changing in some cases for students to get the first job and get started on their career, and the opportunities to do all these things are a direct result of having a comfortable lifestyle, and then having time and skills to be able to give back to the community is pretty cool.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to meet with us and kind of talk about these opportunities of getting involved on campus, getting involved in your community, and how that can both help your professional growth as well as your personal growth. If people are interested in connecting with you or have additional questions, what's the best way for them to reach out to you or get in touch?
Yeah, so you'll find me on the Michigan Tech website on the career services staff team. You'll find me on LinkedIn also, and happy to respond to email if you have questions or comments. I'm assuming we'll put all that stuff in the show notes,
Mhm.
but my email is just my initials. It's jtd@mtu.edu.
Well, again, like Jim said, if you guys do need assistance in anything career related, you can always check out our website, mtu.edu/career. You can also email us at career@mtu.edu, and somebody from our team will get back to you with whatever it is you need. So, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Husky Careers Unleashed. If you enjoy these types of conversations, be sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.